wrong. I do time. Let's go.
All right, man.
What up, Bill? At it again.
Yeah, of course. So, the last time we got together, we were talking about the 20-year anniversary of the first album, which was just 2 a.m.
Correct. 2 a.m.
It's been 2 more years, and now we're at the 20-year mark of the second album, Due Time.
Yeah, time waits for no one.
It's crazy, right? Maybe start out by talking about the personnel that was on the second album versus the group that was on first.
So yeah, when we went to the second album, we went through a lot of changes. Matter of fact, what happened was, I think at one point we were down to like a 4-member band for a minute. Mm-hmm. It was Allison lead, Dennis on bass, Marcus on drums, and Sam on keys. I think we had got down to that low numbers at one point, and we were still doing shows in Baltimore, DC, around wherever.
My name is Dennis Turner, and I was the co-founder and the musical director for Yamama'nym for about 4 or 5 years, give or take. I think we, like 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So, my recollection, if it serves me correctly, I had met Trey and Myra through Sam. Sam was going to UMBC, and he asked me to come play a gig for their Spring Fling concert, and it was with Myra. She was like featuring, and Trey was managing Myra at the time. So I came up, we did a rehearsal, played the show, and then about a week or 2 later, Trey had called me to come to the studio to record some tracks for Myra. And in that session, I met Angie, who was one of the original members of YaMama'Nym, and Brandon also, and I also met Bill Robinson, who was one of the original members. He played like aux keys, and he was also a really good friend of Trey's. Met all of them in this session, and we had gotten to talking about like starting a band. And back home in DC, because this was all in Baltimore, back home in DC, I was working with a guy named Brian Blunt through my boy BJ Simmons. They grew up together, and I met Brian through BJ and did a couple gigs at the can't think of the Mocha Hut. I think the name was the club on U Street back in the day. And Brian was doing a lot of shows, and that's how we started having a conversation about like starting an R&B group or starting a group. And I had another band that I had started with Sam and a couple other guys, and BJ as well, and a guy named Marcus Jackson on drums, who replaced my guy Mark Middleton, who was the original drummer for my jazz fusion group, Distinction, that I started in high school. I had met Sam maybe like my senior year in high school. Sam was 2 years younger than me. So I started a group with that crew, and we were doing shows around the city for nothing, for like peanuts or for smoothies, because we weren't getting paid no way. The lady was let us play at her club or play at her venue on Saturdays for like nothing. And when we had the conversation about starting a band, I was like, well, I know some people. Trey had his people, and we kind of came together at Brian's house and had a rehearsal, and that's kind of how it started. That's how I recall starting the band. I don't think I didn't join the band. Like I helped start it. So it felt more like I was not like for hire, but I was coming in and playing the records that were kind of being produced while I wasn't there a lot of times. Like I had some hands on with some of the records. I'm trying to think about which records. I mean, if you look at the credits, you can see what records that we all got production credits on. But like a lot of times I was coming in and they were playing me records that they had already kind of worked on, and I was just playing. I would add to the records that they were already producing. Not so much like being there from the inception of records. Like I would come in after the fact. So that was my contribution to Due Time. I mean, in the overall direction of it too, like, because my overarching theme was always to be concerned about the live show. So once we finished the records, it was always, how are we going to interpret this stuff live? And I was always a big component, or a big fan of like bringing studio records to the live element. So my involvement or my contribution would be more so about that. Like, it was more so about the live element once we got past the studio stuff.
All right, my name is Samuel Prather. I played keys, sang a little bit, and did some production back in the Due Time days for YaMama'Nym. As far as how I got in the band, I remember that I already knew Dennis Turner from my music director, Mr. Dickerson, and then I met Trey at a party at Susquehanna, I think, or at UMBC, something along those lines. But I believe the way that I got pulled into the band was Myra Mathis had a performance at UMBC, whatever, Yard Fest or whatever they call it. And I played in that band with a drummer that I brought in who maybe was not the right fit for the gig, but we had a good time nonetheless, and the rest is history. So my contribution to Due Time was mostly playing keys. I wrote some songs and I helped on the production end, but you know, it was really just a collaborative thing. Trey really did a good job of trying to make sure that everybody had their own kind of piece of it. And I just, you know, was learning at that point how to use Pro Tools and just trying to pick up everything I could. You know, I spent many a night sleeping on that couch at the studio. So I learned a lot of things that I still use now from those times and the things that we learned from mixing that record.
But then we said, when it's new one, we want to bring some new folks in. So by that time, Brian Blunt had left, Myra had left the band, and they were doing, I think they were with one of the bands, Black Alley, at that time.
Right.
So we were like, all right, let's make it bigger again. So we, Jay Hill used to we used to do it. We would like the house band for open mic down in DC called Bar None. The venue was Bar None. It's still down there. I don't know what it's called now, but down in the basement, it was great. We might have created so much stuff down there. But he used to come through and sing, and we eventually said, "Hey, look, join us in the band."
It was kind of crazy. Like, we had several lead singers, male lead singers in YaMama'Nym. Myra was always like a staple. And then when Allison came on, she was kind of like a staple. Liz, when she came in, she was kind of like a staple. But the males, they switched a lot. Like, we had Brian Blunt at first, and then when Brian left, we had Mike Bennett. And then when Mike Bennett left, we got Jay. But how we got Jay was kind of funny because, like, Jay, we used to do an open mic at Bar None on U Street. I believe it was like every Monday. I can't remember what day it was, but we were there like every Monday doing open mic, and Jay would just be there. Like, he'd just be there. Like, it was almost like, it almost felt like Purple Rain. Like, you just walk into the club and you see the same dude just kind of standing like, yeah, you know I sing. It's like, all right, dude, okay, you sing, all right. And he wound up just always approaching me about like possibly joining the band one day. And, you know, we had singers, so I was like, I don't need a singer. What I need is like another keyboard player, or I need something else. And it's like, and then Brian left. Brian quit one day, and Brian had quit several times, but this in particular time, Brian quit. And I think it was after Mike had left, and then Brian came back, and Brian quit again. And I just remember having a conversation with Trey, and he was like, well, you know, what about Jay Hill? And like, I never really believed in auditioning people, so it wasn't like he had to come in and audition. It was like, just bring him in the room and see how everybody else feels about him. If everybody else likes him, and he can cover the tunes we asked him covered, and cool. So Jay came in, and he was cool. Like, he was cool from Jump Street. Like, he wasn't being asked to do a whole bunch of stuff, a bunch of heavy lifting.
What's up, y'all? It's Jay Hill. Songwriter, super harmonizer, all around male vocalist for YaMama'Nym. If I recall, I was at a talent showcase in DC, and I met the music director, Dennis Turner, and he told me he had a band and they were looking for a male vocalist. Would I be interested? if I want to come to a rehearsal. So I was like, cool. And I remember taking a long ride to Baltimore and sat in, I want to say one, maybe two rehearsals. And I was like, I really like the vibe of this. I like what y'all got going sound-wise, energy-wise. And then the rest is history from there. Well, one of, I guess, my favorite contributions to the Due Time album was in the artwork for the cover. That was one of my biggest suggestions, to kind of have the band displayed in like a silhouette form, so you don't really get an idea of who's who. And then on the back side of it, when you flip it over, it kind of had a paint by numbers type thing, so everybody was individually labeled, like this is 3, this is 5, this is 1. And I just thought that was really cool, because on the front you kind of had no real idea who was who, and it just showed the band as a unit instead of individuals. So that was my idea behind that. So I was really proud of that when it did come to print and I got to see the actual final product. As far as musically, I was just excited to be in the room with some of these guys, because to me everybody was super talented. So I did some leads, I did a lot of backgrounds. I wanted to be the Swiss Army knife. If you needed me to do this, I was gonna do it. If you need me to, just sit here and harmonize, then I'm gonna do that. So I think I was really excited about the process as a whole. So just being in the studio and able to record and, create something that's gonna be around forever, for me was, that was the best contribution I could make.
And then I was working with a girl group. I think the name of the group was Divya. I think it was the name of the girl group. And it was Liz and 2 other young ladies. And they were, doing a little bit. I think we got maybe 1 full song done. And when we needed somebody to pull in, she could still do the Divya stuff, but I was like, I need somebody to come in for the female to, I won't say replace Myra, but Allison was kind of stepping up as a lead, so I said, okay, well basically have somebody to support Allison, but Liz came in strong, right. So we brought her in next.
My name is Liz, and my role was a singer in the second version of YaMama'Nym, right? It's an interesting story. So I was in a girl group at the time, and the group did background vocals for the live recording of YaMama'Nym. That's how I was introduced. And, we did okay. But I think at some time, not so long after, one of the leading vocalists left, and there was an opening for another vocalist, and Trey contacted me to see if I would like to consider and meet with the band and vibe out with them and see how that would work, and it ended up working well. Ended up being a part of the band for the Due Time recording and tour. Oh, I was a writer. I worked with Trey many nights creating. I wrote quite a bit of the songs and co-wrote the songs as well, and also obviously the vocals, backup vocals and lead vocals on the project. Beautiful, the bridge, Looking at Me, I didn't mention that one. We did that live sometimes, but Looking at Me, I wrote that. Obsession, On My Own. Yeah, those are what I can think of right now.
She even sang like backgrounds or something for us with Divya for like a live recording before I think when Mike was still with the band. Mike was gone too. Right. Mike Bennett was gone as well. By the time we did the next one, he was working for BET and his career there was, he was do some more stuff there. And then KJ's an interesting one because it was like, I don't think we were checking for anybody at that point. But Jay Hill said, "Hey, I know this guy, and he's interested in what we do. So can I bring him through?"
And for a moment, it was just Jay, Liz, and Allison, and we was like, we need another singer. And Jay was like, I got somebody. It's like, all right, cool, bring him. This was maybe like a year later, but it was like, we were trying to find like that perfect synergy between like every singer in the group had their role. Like Jay was like a MC, not really like the singer, but he was like the MC. And we were looking for something to complement that on the male side, like a balladeer, like a dude that can, like, like a Teddy Pendergrass kind of dude. And he's like, I got somebody. Like, and the way he positioned it, it was like it was his homie. So he's like, all right, cool. And like, me, I'm like, bring him in if he's cool. Then we can rock with him or whatever. And KJ came in. His name is KJ Dennis. KJ came in, like he did the audition. He came in and he was he sang and he was like, oh, this dude can sing.
So I know Dennis knows better how it went down, but I remember him coming in, and I wouldn't call it auditioning, but he kind of vibed with us, and I thought he can sing. So we didn't need a 4-person front. That was my problem with it. Dennis's story is different than why I did what I did, but I was like, well, he played keys, so let's put him on the keyboard and he can sing too.
Right.
But that cat, he wasn't staying behind the keys.
Right.
He came forward, and of course later he became the lead for YaMama'Nym in the next iteration of the group. But yeah, that was all the personnel changes. Great personnel. No slight to you, Bill, as part of the original group, but that's probably was I would say, performance-wise, because everybody grew by that.
Right.
That's probably when we probably got a real grasp on being a good performance band and creative. I think we were getting more polished at that point.
Yeah. I'm wondering, to get a little bit into your thought process back then, because I remember with the first album, and we talked about it a little bit, that your idea was, I want to get these, kind of Wu-Tang it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Get
100%.
people who you felt like could do some of their own things, and to get this first album to be sort of a launch pad for them. And I know you talked about Divya, that was a group that you were looking at, and I know you were working with Hardheads and some other groups.
Yep.
You were at that point really thinking about branching out and doing a bunch of different things. Was the second album sort of a pivot back or a rethink of that, or was it just an extension of the original plan? How did that come about?
I can see that where you go with that. I think that because it was still the Wu-Tang thought. It never differed from that. Me and Allison started doing some work together, then she started working with everybody, so she started working with all kind of producers. So it was always like everybody was still planning to do their thing. No question about it. But I will say, with the success of the first album, and I'll call it, we got some notoriety. I won't call it monetary success, but we got some notoriety out the first album, and we started touring off the first album. And I think when we went on tour, it started to say, we started to say something's good here, and we started to really polish things up a bit. So that's how that second one became. I could see how you could say it went back to the original band thought, but it still never changed the plan. And that's why, like you said, I was still working with other folks. Everybody in the band was working with different people still, which probably later became the demise of YaMama'Nym. But yeah, that was what was happening. But that was part of the plan.
Absolutely.
And go out. Yeah. But the thought was always to be able to come back together. Similar to Wu-Tang, they do their thing. Matter of fact, who knows if they even like each other. Right. But they always figure out a way to come back. And that's what I was hoping for.
In terms of the way that that second record was promoted, the first one, obviously there was a lot of stuff you were learning in terms of not just engineering and producing, but also promoting and getting a live show together. How was the environment that you kind of built? How did that receive the second album? Was it more like, obviously there was some momentum there, but what was different about how you pushed the first and the second album?
Yeah, to be quite honest, all of it was pretty much based on luck, because we ain't had no money.
Right.
So,
Right.
So what the good thing about with a band, and that's why I needed a band, was the band can promote because they can perform out. You know what I mean? So although people like to hear covers, we were doing our original songs too. And at some point, we began to do more original songs than covers, you know, and people were fine with it. Matter of fact, people enjoyed it. So that's where the promotion was coming from, was really like, now people let us do our songs.
Right.
So when we have these songs, they're like, okay, I can catch it on the album. Additionally, we had started getting some of the promo from like Sirius Radio, so I knew how to get there again, you know, so I knew how to get into that space. But we still was broke. It was like I would put everything I had into, you know, trying to get some little PR and whatever here and then. We did. We had like little spots overseas and things like that. We would send to these little radio shows to do spots on there. So I had started learning some of that. But I realized as a label owner, what you need is capital.
Right.
And what you don't have in capital, you got to figure out a way to work it from the grassroots. And that was what it was. We were really like, let's perform a lot so that we can really start promoting the album. And that's really what it was. I was just finding, of course I was manager too. So I was like, let's find as many gigs, good gigs, from New York to Atlanta to overseas, and let's promote the album that way.
The biggest difference was my involvement in 2 a.m. versus Due Time. Like 2 a.m., I was all in. I was there every day, and you know, even on the mixing part, like if you look at the album credits, I got mixing credits on the record and everything, because I was there like every day, and we were there at 2 o'clock in the morning. We called the record 2 a.m. because we didn't record any of the rhythm section stuff until after 2 a.m. Like Trey ran a studio, and during the day he had sessions, and then we would come in at 2 a.m. and record all our rhythm section parts. And then I guess whenever the vocalists came in, they would come in and do it the day. But myself, Marcus, and Sam were in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, like for weeks at a time, just cutting records. And with Due Time, I was getting pulled in other directions. So I was working the circuit in DC more. I was playing out more. I was getting called to play for people more. I was just working outside of the unit a lot more. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like my involvement in Due Time versus 2 a.m. was like night and day.
There were some big personnel shifts as we went from the first record to the second record, Due Time. But I think that one of the biggest differences was that we were really kind of clicking on all cylinders at this point. Dennis had finally talked me into playing more sounds than just piano. I was really kind of a straight ahead Nazi. I just wanted to play like piano, and like piano with strings was me being, trying to stretch out a little bit. So Trey got a motif, the original motif when it came out, and just the sounds in that keyboard completely changed the way that I played, and I think the way that the band sounded.
How did it feel to have to take that kind of a gamble, to bet on yourself, to do all of that personal investment that you had to do to make that happen? I mean, that was risky, and I'm sure there was probably some times where you were like, should I really be doing this?
Absolutely.
How was that?
So, I think that I've always been a gambler, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, all right, let's risk it. And by that point, I had, I had my degree, but these are the George W. Bush years, so the market was horrible. So I had got like my second job, and I got laid off. So at that point, I'm like, let's put the chips on the table now, because
Right.
I don't have that. I thought that I graduated with a degree and I'm secure, and that let me know, like, no, that's not true. That's not actually how it works.
Right.
You can still miss out. You can
Right.
still be laid off. You can still be without a job. So it was more about really setting myself up to say, if I don't have a job, I can still do something. I can build something where no one can take it away from me.
Yeah.
You know, I had that job and they laid me off, and there's nothing I could do about it.
Right.
With this, at the very least, I felt like, hey, I can always try to find opportunities to do different things. So that's why we opened the studio. I had to work in the studio to make some money.
Right.
We had to do these shows and these tours to make some money. We had to make some records to make some money.
Right.
And so the investment was to try to get myself out of being dependent on anybody else to have a quote unquote job.
My favorite story or memory performing with the band. It's hard to pinpoint just one. I think for me, from my perspective, the memories I had was really me being comfortable in my skin and in front of and on the stage. Again, like the other members, you know, they were together longer. They've had that bond for the most part, and I was part of the new crew. So it was really, I just had a lot of memories of me trying to figure out who I was as an artist and a performer, and that they gave me the room to be able to do that. So those times that I made mistakes, those times that, you know, I was able to recover. Yeah, I don't remember a specific instant. I'm sure others may, you know, but I remember really a lot for me getting over the hump of being a performer, which was something I was honestly scared to do, and I never really did. And this band allowed me the opportunity to do that.
Biggest memory, man, that's a tough one. It's a few of those. Let me see. I mean, I guess if I had to narrow it down to one, or what's most important to me, I would say it was just the fact that we got to do an international tour overseas, and it was for the armed forces, and it was just wonderful to, you know, give them some of the comforts of home from a musical standpoint, you know, with everything that they weren't potentially able to hear while being abroad. But even with that, we were on tour in Japan, and of course we're on the other side of the world, so you never really expect to see anybody you know, or you just, this is before the days of real communication in real time where you know where everybody is at every second of the day. And I remember we were setting up, we were doing sound check at one particular base in Japan, and I heard my name called out, and I noticed it wasn't for one of the band members, and it was one of my closest friends who I consider like a little brother to me, that was stationed there, and I had no idea. So it was just like wonderful to be able to see him, and for music to be able to send me around the world and connect with him. And it felt good just to really see him and know that we can party all together no matter where we are.
One of my favorite stories from performing with the band was actually not on stage. Me and Trey were in downtown Seoul. Everybody else was beat from hanging out previously in the week, and so we just went out to, oh my gosh, what was the name of the club? The Nightlight or something like that. So we're in Seoul, Korea, downtown Seoul, Korea, don't speak but 4 words of Korean, 안녕하세요. And pissy drunk trying to get back to our hotels. It was a good time though. I love downtown Seoul. It's an amazing city. Oh, one of my favorite stories is when we went to St. Louis. Now, St. Louis, we decided to go to St. Louis by Amtrak because we were taking our gear with us. So we ended up getting on this Amtrak train, and it literally took us 30 hours just to hit the crossover point. So we're going to Chicago and then going down to St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken. And it was literally 30 hours. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong on this trip. I think the engine broke down for 8 hours, and so they had to get us a new engine, the front engine to pull the train. And then on top of that, there was some weird strike going on with Amtrak. So literally the people that were working on the train, like at a certain point in the evening, sat down next to us and went to sleep like they were passengers on the train. So it was kind of wild. Yeah, I think all of us couldn't wash 30 hours of funk off in just one shower by the time we got to St. Louis. But we had a good time in St. Louis.
So we were talking about managing a label, growing a label. Do people who run labels, small labels, is there a community of those folks that kind of get together and learn from each other, or is it all just kind of backbiting? What was that like starting that back then?
I think it was. I had certain people that I could depend on and I could feed off. Everybody was trying to make their way, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But I did have a group of people that, like a James Collins, that he was doing his thing with his label. Earl and Pop were doing that thing with in the hip hop space. So I had these different groups that I could kind of say, hey, what are you all doing? And we helped each other, you know. Right. At times we helped each other with different things. So it was that way.
Yeah.
Short-lived, because folks start doing that thing, and then if you start doing better than, you know, it's people then your whole instinct of challenge. That's business people. That's why we become business people.
Right.
Because you have that competitiveness, and people start getting competitive. I do wish that, and I tried it a few times. It just didn't happen. That's the nature of the business. Is that not just the labels, but the musicians in the area and people that we're really trying to do will get together and support each other. I always thought about it like this, and that's what I tried to bring to the table is, you know, all these folks doing shows and doing these things, if we just supported each other, we could fill a venue.
Right.
You know, we just say, hey, I'm going to make sure I got 5 of my people at your event, you bring 5 of your people at my events, and we did that with all the people that were doing this.
Right.
We wouldn't have to worry about venues anymore. Venues would be like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing a show with
when
them
you walk
all
into
the
a
time.
venue, the venue owner can't try to sun you and say,
exactly.
I can get anybody else.
Exactly. Nah, you can't do that. We bring it because we know we bring it in.
Right.
But the competitive nature of the business, this just doesn't lend to that. I wish it would, but it just doesn't lend to that because folks are so competitive and everybody wants to be the breakout. You know.
Right.
Not understanding sometimes, hey, we really just, like Philly did it. You know, Philly really gravitated to that whole, we want to pull each other up, you know.
Yeah.
And we hear some backlashes from that now, like the whole Eve thing, and she's upset about the fact that they never gave her props for what she did with the Roots.
Right.
You know, but at least they were doing it. They were all coming together and bringing each other up. I wish in Baltimore and DC we did more of it. And it was times, there's pockets of when it happened, like I said, but I wish it was more of that from a label standpoint, but also just from an artist and musician standpoint too.
Yeah.
Too much complaining with these struggles of life. I never let these problems get me down. I just look for the bright side, silver line in the cloud.